I'm going to go to our guest and get into the economic news and the latest on all the NSA spying. But China is teetering on the brink. Have a stack of news. Finch says China credit bubble, unprecedented in modern world history. All of these credit bubbles are the same corporate interest accelerating money printing bubbles and fiat bubbles to take over the world and then sign us onto their debt and then pose as the saviors during the global reorganization. And so I agree with Kaiser that we're already in a world meltdown with them lying and saying the economy's gotten great, with the globalists picking winners and losers. But I believe from their own statements it is an engineered collapse. Now the question is, will they ride this out? But he said a year ago it would happen in April. And it didn't happen in April. He said late April. But it was a bold prediction. Now much of what he predicted is starting to happen. I wouldn't say he's been proven correct yet. But I was watching CNBC this morning, and they were all the pundits. Now, they may zig when they zag, so it may be the opposite. But they were saying, yeah, it looks like the Fed's going to start tapering. Yeah, things are going to implode. Outlook's bad. What does that mean? It means they'll start a war as a political distraction, which you now see happening. So I see a lot of indicators there that the big collapse could be beginning to arrive. Now, I hope that's not the case. But joining us is Max Kaiser, who, of course, invented the Hollywood Stock Exchange, which is the basis of a lot of the virtual trading used today, and was a very successful stockbroker before, I guess, retiring at like age 40. And he joins us now. He writes for a lot of major publications, maxkaiser.com, and has a show on RT as well, and has had shows on BBC. Max, you heard me kind of set the table there. Thank you for joining us from London. What do you make of my take on this, and what is happening right now?
Yeah, so it all turns on interest rates, and interest rates are starting to move up. Now, this is pretty much going to put the kibosh on global bond markets and stock markets. And the rhetoric coming out of the mainstream financial press as of a couple of months ago was that rising interest rates were telegraphing increased growth, that there was an increased growth in the economy. But since then, all the major economies have reported their GDPs are down, employment is flat to stagnating. So the reason interest rates are going up is not because of growth, but because of fear that this unwinding of this epic bubble is happening. And so this is what I said would happen. And the rising interest rates are telling us that is exactly what is happening. So look for interest rates to continue to go higher. This means that anyone with mortgages, variable rate mortgages, particularly in the UK, what they call the mortgages that are set variable rate mortgages, tracker mortgages, will be underwater very quickly on any houses that they bought. And, of course, George Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has been fueling a massive Ponzi scheme here in the UK by having the government guarantee mortgages up to 20% of a mortgage under a scheme called Help to Buy. He's actually mirroring the catastrophe that was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that led to the collapse of housing in America. So George Osborne is doing that now. He's just started that program here. So this, of course, will also end in disaster.
Now, for laymen out there, describe the economic situation we're in, why this is happening, and any other tricks they may have up their sleeve to extend the incremental collapse out that they want to properly milk us and then draw and quarter us, rather than a big accelerated collapse, which they fear, in their own words, I saw Jim Cramer this morning saying, stop the derivatives. You're coming out with synthetic derivatives. The people aren't going to put up with it. Stop it. You guys are going to get us all in trouble. But it doesn't matter, because the more aggressive criminals, and Cramer admits that he's an insider trading criminal, NVIDIA's, the more aggressive criminals, the suicide traders, as you call them, they're in control.
Yeah, well, to give the context of this, over the past 30 to 40 years, it's been a race between those who are creating debt and the growth that we see in the economy. And sometimes there is a positive GDP growth despite the increase in debt. Sometimes debt is growing faster than GDP, and we call those periods recessions. And when growth is outstripping debt, we call those periods of growth. But starting in 2008, the world now is in 5 years of debt increasing without any growth, really appreciable growth anywhere in the world. And it was even just 6 months ago, China was considered to be growing. Now it's considered to be contracting, or its growth rate de-accelerating. So there's no growth to get people out of this debt. The derivatives pile, the synthetic derivatives pile, the massive pile that Kramer's talking about is growing. Now, is there another trick up the sleeve of the global banksters? There is another trick that they could do, which is that they could take up to $100 trillion worth of bad debt, combine them in Europe, the U.S., and Asia into a new bond that they could create based on the IMF monetizing this paper via their special drawing right, or SDR. With, the IMF is like a central bank in that respect, like the ECB or the Federal Reserve. It has its own currency, the special drawing rights, or the SDR. And 2 or 3 years ago at Davos, one of the people attending Davos mentioned that they could float a $100 trillion loan facility to roll up all this bad sovereign debt into a super global
and then back it with carbon taxes. Stay there. We'll be right back with the $100 trillion global government tax.
Now you can watch Alex Jones live at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
You can also browse the network, the InfoWars Nightly News,
and over 60 movies and documentaries all together in one place.
You can watch the Alex Jones radio show live as it happens.
So check it out, Infowars.com/show.
Again, if you just tuned in, I'm Alex Jones. I'm your host. I'm a libertarian constitutionalist populist. I just want justice. I want freedom. And so I'm demonized by basically every publication in the United States, every establishment publication, from National Review to MSNBC, from Bill O'Reilly to CNN. And I just have a sick feeling that I've never had before about America and just about the world. I'm very, 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 very upset because I don't get up here and talk about world economic collapses to have a shocking headline. I know when they get up there on all the financial shows and say it's the best economy ever, everything's wonderful. I know what's happening in the real economy. I know about municipalities going bankrupt all over the U.S. and all over the world. I know about Europe being signed on to derivative debts that aren't their debts in any case. Trillions and trillions of dollars designed to bankrupt us. I see governments gearing up for oppression. I see just brazen criminal activity by the government and corporations, and it freaks me out. And so I look for places to move, places to run. There is nowhere. It's a global corporate government, and I've seen them go from on MSNBC and CNN from saying the economy is wonderful to, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. Which means that they may be getting ready to drop the hammer because they want to at least act like, with short attention spans of the public, that they knew what they were talking about. They know the truth. And they could have fixed this, is what's sad about it, but they cannot turn back from this gulag casino model that Max Kaiser talks about. This is a short segment, long segment coming up, Max, but are you dreading this as much as I am? I mean, how are you handling this emotionally? And at your gut level, I mean, how bad is it? What do you really think is going to happen, Max?
Well, hey, first of all, we miss you here in the UK. When you were here, the media and the TV shows were interesting for a few days. Now it's back to the same old boring BBC and same old
nonsense. When are you coming back?
Well, Max, I don't know. I don't know if I can run the gauntlet there and, back to the here in the U.S. The point I'm getting at here is how bad is it currently right now?
Well, it's a slow motion train wreck that is brought about by too much debt. I mean, I guess you could imagine that you've got this train and it's pulling debt. The American economy is the engine and it's pulling debt. and the government is adding more cars of debt to this train, and it's slowing down and slowing down, and it's coming to a complete stop. And then people are panicking all over the world. And look what's happening in Chicago. Look what all the violence. Look what's happening in Detroit. The state is about to go bankrupt. That's a direct result of this problem. It's just happening in a regional basis, but that's a direct result of what exactly we're talking about. So you say, when's it going to happen? When's the collapse going to happen? Well, in Detroit, it's happened already. In Chicago, it's become more violent than Iraq. I mean, this is already happening. So it's happening right now. It's just it hasn't happened from coast to coast as such, but it's happening in these pockets that are exploding in the United States and in cities all over the world because it's all connected to the same problem. And it'll happen here in the UK, of course, and more obviously in the short term. And
that's what the martial law buildup is mainly for, is just the clampdown and taking everybody's private bank accounts, and the Boy Scouts serving in FEMA brigades. I mean, it's just...
Well, we have an example of it here in the UK this week. There's a bank called Co-op Bank. It wasn't big enough to be too big to fail. So instead, they're going to do a bail-in. So the bondholders of the bank are going to have to pony up some cash. So this is another trend we've seen in the last couple of years. If you're part of the too-big-to-fail banks, then the government bails out the bondholders and you're sweet. If you're not part of that club, then you could be in Cyprus, you could be part of Co-op Bank, you could be part of some other bank or country, and therefore you get your wealth confiscated. So wealth confiscation is a trend that became very obvious with Cyprus, and now it's getting growing in different regions. They're talking about it in Japan. Remember 10 months ago or 11 months ago when I said that there's this global bond apocalypse on the horizon, I said the number one trigger for this would be Japan. And since that time, we have had a huge economic volatility happening in Japan as that market goes through a gut-wrenching bond collapse as well as a stock market volatility. So we're seeing it happen there because they've had 2 decades of what they call lost decades. They can't stimulate using debt, and they can't export their way into growth. So this could be the sinkhole around which all these other...
Yeah, you did say a year ago it would start in Japan, and much of what you predicted is now starting to happen. I want to talk about short-term, mid-term, long-term, what you think is going to happen next, gold, and a lot more.
Hi, Ted Anderson, president of Midas Resources. With over 30 years of experience in the precious metals business, I can tell you without a doubt, we are facing the most dangerous and volatile times, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Peace of mind is gold and silver. Now is the time to invest in gold. When it comes to bullion coins, our prices are competitive and the closest to melt. If it's numismatics you're looking for, we have some of the best deals out there. Visit MidasResources.com today or go to Infowars.com and click on the link to see our daily specials. Here's an example of one of our long-term specials we've been offering for more than a year. 2 silver dollars from the turn of the last century, plus 2 powerful films, The Obama Deception and The American Dream. We also add in the book Dishonest Money, all for $72 and free shipping. The most trusted name in precious metals is Midas Resources. Call 1-800-686-2237 or go to Infowars.com. I'm Ted Anderson with Midas Resources.
We are now only entering the edge of a global financial superstorm, the likes of which the planet has never seen. Here in the United States, the private Federal Reserve is giving more than $85 billion of taxpayer money a month to themselves and other offshore foreign banks. And the worst part is, we have to pay the bank's interest on the money we give them. There is now a race between the global central bank mafia cartels to see who can devalue their country's currencies the fastest. We are already seeing big increases in inflation at the grocery store and the gas line. This will eventually lead to hyperinflation. More than a dozen top globalists like George Soros have been buying record amounts of gold while at the same time bad-mouthing it to the public. Don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do. For more than 6,000 years of recorded human history, gold has been the ultimate hedge against uncertain times and inflation. Before investing in metals, it is important to do your own research and find a reputable company. Midas Resources has the highest Better Business Bureau rating of an A+. Unfortunately, very few precious metal companies can boast that. Midas Resources has assembled one of the most educated, researched, and professional teams of brokers in the industry. The evidence is overwhelming. In uncertain times, gold and silver is safe harbor. Now is the time to invest in gold. Call 800-686-2237 and Midas Resources will mail you 10 reasons to own gold absolutely free. No shipping. It's absolutely free. And finally, Ted Anderson wants to challenge you to find any deal that comes close to his 2 silver dollars at cost with free shipping with 2 free films and a book for $72. That's more than $160 value for $72 shipping included. Click the link at Infowars.com to go to the MidasResources.com specials page. Brought to you by MidasResources.com and Ted Anderson, the trusted name in precious metals. What we're seeing is a revolution by technocrats using NSA systems to rig the markets, to spy on their competition. So how do we have a revolution against criminal revolutionaries that got control in 1913 of the issuance of our currency and have now gotten control of most of our society? They've been dumbing us down for a long time. What do you do when they publicly run Al-Qaeda and are giving them missiles, and Saudi Arabia says give them more missiles, which is just the cover to claim they gave them the missiles they really got from Benghazi? And I see articles like this all the time here in the U.S. now. Here's one out of WWII television. Man charged after corralling suspected vandals in a closet. He came in where they'd done $40,000 worth of damage. They've been indicted for that, with a hammer knocking holes in the wall. He grabbed the hammer away and said, wait here for police, and he's now been indicted. He's now been charged. So that's how a Wayne County man is now facing 4 charges of endangering the welfare of a child after he interrupted an act of vandalism. See, he didn't even touch any of them. But you don't have a right to citizen's arrest now. In England, if you fight back with your fist with someone trying to stab you in your home, they will, even if you get stabbed and you beat them up, they will indict you, throw you in prison, because there's nothing more evil than a citizen defending themselves. That's the great crime to a criminal government, to a nanny state. I want to get this guy on the show. And then I've got all this other NSA news about how they retina scan kids all over the country when they get on the school bus and don't tell the parents. Same thing was done in England a few years ago. It's a global unified program of just the good fellas that are a bunch of corporate crooks taking over. So, Max, let me ask you this question. Break it down in layman terms. What do you expect to see now in the economy? How bad will it get? And what other rabbits can they pull? You mentioned some of those. What will that do? And how do you, looking out to the future, how do you expect this in your gut to end? What does Max Kaiser think's really going to happen?
Well, the 2 important numbers are inflation and the rate at which wages are growing. Now, we know wages are flat to contracting. Adjusted for inflation, real wages haven't grown in 10 years. But inflation is growing. So the government says it's running at 2.5% to 3% here in the U.S. or the U.K. But if you look at the price of what stuff really buy, gasoline, food, etc., it's running at 8, 9, 9%. So that trend is where people make direct contact with how these policies are hurting them. Their dollars are losing purchasing power, and their standard of living is decreasing, and they don't have any wage growth to offset that. And that trend will continue. There's over the past 50 years or so, there was a bit of a correlation between stock prices and wages. A lot of times you would see stock prices go up and wages would go up. But this past 5 years, during the stock market rally that has made many billionaires many, many times richer, wages have stayed flat. So financial engineers have perfected a technique where they can increase asset values, that is to say, stocks and stuff like art, fine art, yachts, etc., things that the billionaires buy. They figured out a way to get those prices to keep going higher without increasing wages. So that's been the experiment that's been on for 30 years. They finally have perfected this. So there's no reason to stop, because the cost of labor is not going to go higher, no matter how much money they print and to put in their own pocket. Wages are just not going to go higher. So
exactly. It's an inflation only in luxury goods. Everything else is imploding, and then they'll just... People will only have jobs as cops or prison guards, and so we go into the gulag economy. It's all been... Well, Rand Corporation, as you know, wrote about it 50 years ago. They've really done a great job.
Yeah, there's no way that wages are ever going to match inflation in the foreseeable future. So, and of course the unions, which were in place to defend the worker, they've been completely destroyed. Now, of course, you can say, well, unions are run by corrupt union officials. That's true. And union officials have done a lot to destroy the unions. But nevertheless, now you have a situation where there's absolutely no one lobbying on behalf of workers at all. There's nobody lobbying for workers, for wages. I've said, and this is true economically, that if you simply paid out wages to workers and you tripled or quadrupled the minimum wage and financed it with the same 0% interest rates from the Federal Reserve that Citibank can get or Lloyd's in London can get, then you could have an economy that was growing both from workers and asset owners. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to share anything. They just want to create
What's the plan
where they take all the profits and leave nothing.
What's the plan to bring in 30 million illegals? I mean, the globalists are all for it, Republicans and Democrats. I just look at it and say, I can't go to Mexico and have a baby for free. I can't get on welfare there. I'm all for workers to this country, and I'm all for immigrants. My issue is that they are now basically corporate minions and are going to be used to drive down wages even further, and that's the goal.
Right, cheap labor. Of course that's the goal. Cheap labor is desirable. And as long as these people have no rights, as long as they are one step out of prison, or, the biggest working population in America right now are actually prisoners.
Yeah.
Because there was an overturn of a law recently that made it legal, once again, to outsource labor to prisons. And not only are judges throwing kids into prison on spurious claims to feed the prison industrial complex, but now they're putting people in prison because that's now become a cheap source of labor. Now, this is a complete repudiation of laws against slave labor. So slavery is legal in America. Anyone who thinks that slavery was outlawed is wrong. Slavery is completely legal in America again.
I totally agree. In fact, when you see them passing a law where even many wooden pipes, it says some wooden pipes are okay, but if you read the definition of hookahs and things, it's not, where a felony to have a pipe, and then you see stuff where they tell the kid, take your NRA shirt off, but the school didn't have a code against, non-profane lettering, so they charge him with the gun on his shirt being a terroristic threat, and then they tell kids at commencements that they can't thank God when that's their free speech, whether you believe in God or not. I mean, I just see cases every day of how wildly authoritarian things are and how the law is designed to let violent offenders go, but keep the nonviolent people actually in the prisons working for 25 cents an hour. That's how they legalize slavery, is they just pass a bunch of laws now where 0.5, that's half a beer. You're going to get a felony now and go to jail. They want all of us in the system.
All right. Well, the country with the biggest prison population in the world is the United States. Bigger than China, bigger than any country in the world is the United States, because it's such a hugely profitable business. And the thing about the Second Amendment or gun rights is that it's a hot-button issue. So a lot of people will be out there defending their Second Amendment rights, but sacrifice their First, Third, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment rights. So it's very unbalanced. A lot in the pro-gun debate is unbalanced in that people are willing to defend their Second Amendment right, but sacrifice their First Amendment right or the Third or Fourth Amendment right. So there's a bit of a confusion, I think, in the overall pushback against this NSA PRISM-style gulag state. And remember, the prison gulag state needs a PRISM to make it work, and now we know, thanks to Edward Snowden, that there is a PRISM. The PRISM, you should change the name of Prison Planet to Prison Planet, because now we all live in this NSA PRISM dome of perpetual surveillance. And I thought the interview with Edward Snowden today was pretty interesting in that he touched on a lot of very interesting points, and I am in the camp that gives him 100% credibility, along with Glenn Greenwald. So there is at least a few people out there who have managed to blow the whistle, come forward, and give the administration some hot flashes.
Well, I love how over and over again we see Cheney and neocons come out and say, arrest this guy. He's a traitor. He must work for the Chinese. These are the guys that transferred our missile secrets, our reactor secrets, our technology, our jobs, bipartisanly, the Democrats are involved as well, to communist China because they could get fat cat state-guaranteed deals with them. Now they're busy selling off. I was watching this morning, CNBC, like I said, and they were just, even the hosts were like, my God, they're buying up the entire infrastructure because America sold out. MIT has come out and admitted that the jobs are never coming back because we sold out the infrastructure. The elite here will no longer be the elite. They were so greedy, they even destroyed their own command base, Max Kaiser. And so my point is, it's so rich how this military-industrial complex talks about how it's taking our rights to protect us when everybody knows they run Al-Qaeda, they run the Chi-Coms, everything bad, they run it.
Well, you make a good point there that the Dick Cheneys of the world are pointing to foreign powers and saying we need to protect ourselves against them invading. While at the same time, he's cutting deals with the exact same foreign powers to buy huge pieces of America's infrastructure. China, in particular, is buying up big pieces of American industry, as are other countries around the world. And the reason why they're cutting deals now is because of the huge debt that America has, that they realize that the only way they can settle this debt is to sell off these big pieces of the infrastructure. And you saw this in Greece. Greece was a country that before Goldman Sachs and John Paulson and Papandreou, the prime minister, got involved, it was a $400 billion economy. It was determined that it wasn't that big of an economy. It was, after all, maybe only 2 times the size of IBM or 2 times the size of Berkshire Hathaway. And you could effectively do a leveraged buyout of Greece, and that's exactly what they did. They went in there, they flooded it with lots of bad debt. They transferred that debt to the government. The government then transferred that debt to the people through austerity. The economy has collapsed, and now they're selling off the assets. A few weeks ago, for the first time, one of the Greek islands was sold to a Qatar, one of the top guys in Qatar, the Emir of Qatar, and that opened the floodgates for these kleptocrats and oligarchs to start buying these Greek islands. So now,
just like Detroit created taxes that ran everybody out, set up this corrupt bureaucracy, and now they're fully collapsing. That is the model. But I think this is so out of control, they may not get away with it. Let me show TV viewers and radio listeners a couple articles here. The New York Times. Police officers arrested a protester in Istanbul on Sunday, the same day Prime Minister rallied supporters. So he was allowed to have people come out and rally for him, but people that just rallied to keep the only park in the city, the only green space open where they play soccer, it shows the police, it looks like breaking the guy's arm. You can see they've twisted it back so far. No way that didn't break. And stomping him in the head, and the New York Times goes with police arrest. See, they just ignore everything is propaganda. Let's go to the next article. For many, no penalty for crimes. Drunk driving, shoplifting, breaking in homes. The police, it says they made the decision to not arrest for petty crimes. Meanwhile, the code is illegal aliens, folks. It's illegal aliens. They don't arrest. And again, though, citizens get pulled over with no seatbelt. You go to jail in Austin, and they throw the book at you because we're seen as milk cows, Max Kaiser.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for people to understand that when you talk about the New York Times, you're talking about a captured journalistic enterprise. They are not giving you unbiased truth. This is an institution that's gone horribly wrong. So has all of the big media outlets in the U.S. I mean, your show is delivering great information with the Texas twister. You know, this is what most people don't understand in the foreign press, that in America now the media landscape is so horrid and so decrepit and so immoral that the only way you can get through the prison of lies is through this, grenade approach, which if you get past the first couple of shockwaves, you end up getting lots and lots of really great information. So we want to thank you for that. And again, I will repeat that wherever I go in the world, people always say, oh, yeah, I heard you on Alex Jones. Not that they heard me on the BBC or they heard me on this other outlet. They say, oh, I heard you on Alex Jones. So you've got this huge global audience with people waking up to this. And it's sad, though, that the country the most to lose is the United States. The people of the United States, they were holding all the cards. And now they've given it all back to the people like Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney, if there's a traitor in the mix, it's not Edward Snowden. It's Dick Cheney. Look at Dick Cheney's track record and selling America's freedom down the rat hole for what? A few extra dollars? What was his incentive? Is he that shallow? Is he that callous that he would just blow America?
Well, that's even what the big Pentagon war planners say is they're getting. Wait, the military-industrial complex and the banks, they have one thing, profit, but it's even destroying America's empire in the future, so they're even getting, wait, we're going to lose the golden goose because Dick Cheney and Bill Clinton and others slaughtered it. It's incredible. We're going to go to break and come back with Max Kaiser. Just briefly, the trailer will be out tomorrow. You can pre-order it now. It's only available at Infowars.com. I'm in it. It's State of Mind, the Psychology of Control. It's about the past, the present, and the future of mind control. It's very well done. The same makers are the people that put out Oklahoma City and WWII. The film is available in Blu-ray and DVD right now, and it's got everybody in it, a bunch of doctors and scientists and G. Edward Griffin and Colonel Schaefer and myself and so many others. So State of Mind, the Psychology of Control, and for the first 5,000 people that ordered it, that sounds like a lot, it's not, you will get free the film exposing the Private Federal Reserve, the American Dream. I have 5,000 of these. When they're gone, that's it. We never offer a new film with something free out of the gates, but I'm doing this now because State of Mind is so important. Order it today, InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsStore.com.
Jakari Jackson here, and I want to talk to you for a second about water. You know about ProPure, our flagship water purification system, but check out some of our portable water filter products at InfoWarsStore.com. The clearly filtered water pitcher. Also, for those of you on the go, we have the Athlete Edition filtered water bottle and the RAD Eliminator Pro filtered sports bottle that removes radiation. And keep in mind, we have replacement filters for all of these products. The ever-popular grab-and-go bag favorite, the Life Straw, the Crystal Quest shower filter system, and the Aquapod kit, great for mass storage of water. And while you're at the InfoWars shop, pick up a copy of our latest book, 31 Days to Survival. You can find all this and more at the InfoWarsStore.com, and don't forget it's your support that funds our operation. Sign up for our free newsletter at Infowars.com/newsletter.